Let's get to a position group a day. It's going to keep the doctor away. We will break down a different position group for the Commanders out of this season and into the offseason each and every day on the show. Today, let's zero in on the offensive line.
The offseason is here for the Washington Commanders. Grant and Danny go position by position and break down the Commanders roster ahead of free agency and the draft. It's Position Group a Day with Grant and Danny.
Interestingly, Danny, for a team with a lot of needs and a bunch of question marks, the offensive line gets pushed down the list a little ways. And this is not generally the case with a team that isn't very good, because if you're solid up front, you normally are going to have some success. I don't know if you'd agree with me, though. I have a lot of concerns. The O-line isn't really one of them.
It's not on my list of concerns, but here's what I wonder. Is it good, or is it relatively good to the rest of the roster? You know what I mean? Because I'm not sitting there going, oh my God, you got to fix this. Like if I was a Chargers fan or a Raiders fan, or I'm the Patriots going to the Super Bowl, I'm going, is Drake May going to be protected at all? Can we put an extra offensive lineman next to Will Campbell and maybe jumbo a package to that side just to drop back and pass? I don't feel like it's a disaster, but I don't know if it's a great group. I don't know if it's just the strength of this team, which isn't very good, or if it's a strength league-wide. I don't know the answer to that.
It's not great, but depending on the publication, it's going to be ranked somewhere in the 7 to 13, 14 range in the NFL out of 32 offensive lines. PFF, with all of their grading and all the things that they do, ranked Washington's offensive line coming out of the year 13th overall, sandwiched between the Detroit Lions and the Atlanta Falcons. Falcons, who are viewed to have had a pretty good offensive line. They write, Washington's O-line was hit hard by injuries in 2025. The only Commanders offensive lineman to log more than 1,000 snaps was rookie Josh Connerly Jr. The first-round pick started slowly, but got better as the season went on. Connerly gave up 29 pressures, including 6 sacks, in his first 8 games, but he surrendered only 15 pressures and 2 sacks in his last 7 outings. They highlight Laremy Tunsil as the best player. They say he remains one of the best pass-blocking left tackles in the league, a 3.3% pressure rate, third at the position this year. And diving into the offensive line going into the offseason, the reason I say it's not a concern or a major point of emphasis for me, I think they're pretty set. Tyler Biadasz is under contract. Sam Cosmi is further removed from his injury, is going to be your right guard. So there's your center and your right guard. Connerly did get better as the year went on, and I still feel really good about him long-term. At right tackle, uber athletic, good footwork, is going to get better and better. Chris Paul is the one question because he's a pending free agent. And so Tunsil is under contract. He'll probably hold out if he doesn't get a new deal. We'll talk about him in a second because I think he's actually the biggest storyline just because he needs an extension. There's no reason to believe they won't give him one. Adam Peters has gone on record saying they look forward to paying him already. The only time we've seen a star player for this team have to get paid by Adam Peters so far, it was McLaurin, and it turned into a game of chicken and kind of a disaster in camp last year. But I don't think that's going to happen at all. But we can come back to Tunsil. But you've got Tunsil at left tackle under contract, Biadasz at center, Cosmi at guard, Connerly at tackle, all ready to go. The one spot that could be an area where you have a new starter next year is left guard, if they don't want to bring Chris Paul back. They still have Brandon Coleman, who they drafted in the 3rd round, who has played tackle and guard. He could be your third tackle, your tweener, your guy that could play either side. Or you could kick him inside the guard and let Paul walk. Either way, though, having him as depth as a 6th guy, even if they let Nick Allegretti go and Andrew Wiley go, it's not that hard to go find depth pieces. I think they're going to have a top half of the league offensive line again next year pretty easily.
I think so, too. And if you look at overthecap.com's positional spending chart, something I'm always obsessed with, figuring out how different teams architect themselves and how they're built, Washington's offensive line spending is, I believe it's 8th in the NFL behind the Chiefs, Vikings, Panthers, Falcons, Broncos, Buccaneers, Packers, and then there's Washington in terms of salary cap allocation. That's without an extension to Laremy Tunsil affecting his cap number this year. That's for 2026. So it tells you you're kind of getting what you're paying for, right? You have an upper half of the league offensive line. You've spent on it, and that includes a rookie at this point, but a couple free agents to sort of fill in those holes. You mentioned at center, and you paid good money for Cosmi at right guard. There you go. That's how you get to that level. Other teams are maybe getting more bang for your buck. Other teams are maybe doing it a little bit better, but this is not a position that you worry about necessarily, or a group rather that you worry about necessarily. I'm with you on the left guard spot. Every time I've seen Brandon Coleman, listen, I'm not an offensive line coach or a scout, but I go, yeah, that's good. right? It seems like you're just fine there, and you could afford to let Chris Paul walk away. Maybe Coleman's too valuable as your Swiss Army knife, a swing tackle / fill-in guard / you do everything, including deliver the peanuts to Section 412, but seems to be a pretty good position here for this group, and I wonder where the upgrades are, if any.
The only place that you're going to upgrade possibly is left guard. And if they want to spend there, they can. But again, I don't really believe that they're big spenders or that they want to be. So if it's not a big necessity and you already have an internal answer potentially in Coleman, then you would just plug and play him. But what I would do, honestly, I would pay Paul. I don't think it's going to take a ton of money to keep him around. He's a 7th-round pick. He's kind of a little bit of a happy-to-be-here guy, I think. Now, I do also believe that his production waned a little bit as the season went on, so I wonder if they're as smitten with the idea of him as their long-term answer as they were, early in the season. Because remember, they started with Coleman. They plugged him in. He got better and better the first half of the year. It felt like, he was mauling some people, and he's good in the run game, especially. I think you could be fine. I've always disrespected guards a little bit. Call me Jay Gruden or Mike Shanahan, I guess, more than tackles anyway, but that's changing. You look at the final 4 teams in the NFL remaining, they had some of the top 4 pressure percentages among D tackles in the NFL. Like the idea of pressure right up the gut now from tackles, not edges, actually can be more debilitating than pressure off the edge. So you actually need a really strong foundation because there are better and better players playing on the inside that can rush the quarterbacks in ways that didn't happen in the past. But I would probably either pay Paul or just slide Coleman over and then go get a tweener tackle, a third tackle who can be my flex guy at that position. But for all of the positions we're going to talk about, this is the one that is most set, it feels like. And it's funny because it's not necessarily the narrative from fans, especially whenever we talk about Jaden Daniels, you hear a lot of like, oh, the line gets him killed. And it's just not accurate or true when you actually watch the games and dive into some of the numbers. Could they be better? Yes. And that's, I think, your point. Should they settle at just being a good line? Somewhere in that, let's say, 8 to 13 range. Or you're close. Do you want to try to be elite by getting one of the best left guards in the league? And now you've got an upper echelon left tackle. They're going to pay Tunsil, too.
Yeah.
I mean, he's going to be paid as one of the highest tackles in the league. So do you want to pay him like that and then play a guard, some of the highest rate guard money in the league? I don't know that you necessarily do. They also have to think about life after this year. Biotish is coming up at the end of his contract. I think, Tunsil is ready to extend and I think could play well for a few more years, but he's not 25 anymore either. So you want to start layering some talent. It would not surprise me if they were in a mode where they wanted to draft a couple of linemen to develop them, but they just don't have that luxury if they only have 5 picks.
Right. And yeah, you're limited in some way. And we talk about this all the time. This is our Brian Zimmerman axiom, who we spoke about last segment, funnily enough, where he said, not everyone gets to make $200 million. Right? You cannot build a team that way. Like there are cap rules. You have to go cheap somewhere. You have to get away with it somewhere. And I know I'm an advocate sitting here talking out of both sides of my mouth. The first segment, I just screamed about, please get me a superstar. Well, for every blue chipper, you need to find a bargain. You need to find your Dante Fowler for no money that gives you double-digit sacks, a guy that outkicks his coverage, like Chris Paul, for example. Chris Paul was an afterthought. We're going in training camp. All right, let's start doing the numbers. I don't know how many people right away were like, yeah, Chris Paul is not only a lock to make the roster, but he'll start 15 or 16 games this year. I don't think I had that in the office pool. Most people didn't. You need a few of those to work out for you. So maybe this is one of the areas where you go, this is good enough. You can't settle for that all the time, but you have to make some trade-offs and sacrifices, especially if they go big game hunting as I want them to. A playmaker on each side of the ball and probably at a premium position because of how devoid the cabinet was from Ron and the Martys, where that's usually a draft pick where you get an affordable difference maker at one of those key spots. You may have to dip into free agency and overspend top-of-the-market money for one of those difference makers at a premium spot, which means you've got to go cheaper somewhere else. Ipso facto, the line's pretty good. It may just stay that way.
Would you make left guard a priority to try to go big there? Or is there anything on this offensive line that you would view as a necessity this offseason other than just locking up Tunsil, which seems like a no-brainer and we're all hoping is pretty seamless? There's no reason to drag that one out.